everyone! Ako po si Danica More M. Domingo.
At ako naman po si Sam De Los Santos. Dito tatalakayin natin ang mga importanteng issue tungkol sa governance at development.
Ating ding mapag-uusapan ng ilan sa mga teorya at resulta ng aming mga ginagawang research.
At ito ang patok.
Usapang Public Affairs at Development. In the previous episode, we got the background of the study titled Assessment of Stakeholders' Compliance to the Philippine Technology Transfer Act of 2009, started in 2019 and just completed early this year.
In this episode, we will now move on to the highlights of the results of the study, the aspects of compliance, performance, problems relating to the technology transfer in the state colleges and universities in the Philippines, the government research development institutions, general funding agencies, and other stakeholders within the country. Once again, we have here with us Mr. Hadji Jalotjot, university researcher and project leader. Okay, so now we have finished talking about the objectives of your study. We talked about your stakeholders and how you conducted the data collection part of your study. What were the results in the significant findings of your research?
So let's start first, sir, siguro po sa compliance po muna.
Well, yes. Let's start with the compliance. The title says it's a compliance assessment of compliance. No? Well, the good news is that our research and development institutions, those that are mandated to undertake R&D without any teaching function, no, like the universities. No? So these are what I mentioned before. Those agencies attached under the DOST and the Department of Agriculture. No? For the most part, no, they are very compliant. No? In terms of IP protection, what else? Establishment of the technology transfer offices, etc. What else? They have the protocol. No? I think out of the 8 RDIs, only one, no, is not really that compliant. No? And as expected, no, RDIs under the DOST system are almost 100%
compliant.
no,
Yes, of
compliant.
course. They have their own technology transfer protocol for the DOST.
Well, it's kind of expected because DOST is the lead agency, no, under the IRR. No? Of course, there are partner agencies, no, like DTI, IPOFIL, or the Intellectual Property Office. But DOST is the lead agency, so they have this ironed out, no? Because of course they will be the role model.
And I think I'm not sure, but most of the DOST offices are complying to the quality management systems.
Yes, I think so.
I think that also helps them to be, like what you've said, the role model for compliance when it comes to laws like this.
So that's for the RDIs. No, what I term as well, it's a little bit boring because they all comply with the law. No, for the SUCs, though, that's where it gets a little bit exciting, no? And interesting.
Tell us more about it.
The results are mixed, no, but definitely the percentage of SUCs or state universities and colleges that are highly compliant is very low. In fact, there are quite a number of our respondents that are totally not compliant, no? Especially with IP protection, which is the most basic, no, point to comply with, no? Because you cannot pursue technology transfer without your IP being protected.
But there are cases of technology transfer without IP protection.
But that's basically extension if you're going to give it for free.
Okay.
So yon, SUCs, mixed yan, no? But most of them, very few are highly compliant. And Danica mentioned earlier yung SUC level. This refers to the leveling process of the Commission on Higher Education, wherein they categorizes the SUCs as level 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
No? So
4 is the
highest.
Okay.
There's a lot of variables on that leveling exercise, and it includes already the research, the patents, etc. Also, of course, the instruction. No? But for the most part, levels 1 and 2 SUCs in our survey, sila yung non-compliant.
Okay.
As you go higher sa SUC levels, they become more compliant. So that's basically the pattern there. Another result, no? Even for SUCs that are compliant, they have the IP policy, technology transfer protocol. No? And most importantly, they already have the technology transfer office. Only 2 SUCs out of the 76 respondents or 70 plus respondents, only 2 SUCs have full-time head of their technology transfer office. What I mean by full-time is it doesn't have any other work
Except
other than being the head of that office.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So
the
we
rest-
manage the office.
And the rest are faculty administrators, which is a very common practice naman sa SUCs. No? Most of our administrators are faculty or researchers with administrative load or
I
work.
wonder if they have full-time unit heads, let's say, or technology transfer officers, did it make a difference when it comes to their performance?
Well, there's no variability kasi in the data. No? But we have other variables where we have shown that it can affect the performance. Since you mentioned performance, I think that variable is the number of plantilla staff.
Okay.
So I think this is supported naman by previous studies, although it is in the US. No? That you need full-time personnel, no, in the technology transfer offices, no, to be able to increase, no, the technology commercialization rate. Why? Because faculty administrators, researcher administrators already have or are complaining already of high workload.
And then you're going to
And then you
another
add
workload.
administrative load, no? So, how can they focus, no, on this very important job?
Yes, Mr. Yin. Aside from that, pre-commercialization or from the IP protection to commercialization activities is not easy. And it's also not free, so it requires other skills as well. Since we have, for example, we need people who knows how to draft patents, and we need people who knows about the market, who conducts market studies, and we need people in the tech transfer offices for that. So there are some offices who have that people, and there are some who don't have that.
Yeah.
So, I think what Danica is basically saying is, these are specialized skills.
Yes.
no?
I
But
remember-
you need people
Yeah, go
with
ahead, sorry.
those specific skills to do that job.
Yes. I remember because if you, like for example, I used to work for TTBDO in UPLB. They were formerly called the Center for Technology Transfer and Entrepreneurship. And there's really a dedicated staff who would just check if this can be patentable, if this technology will be a what do you call this, a utility model, or stuff like that. And they undergo training just to be able for them to be more correct or exact when they examine or when they assess a study that is being submitted to them. So definitely that requires a staff that
Right.
is really dedicated to that kind of work.
Yes.
No?
And you should know how to assess, no? Especially assessing technology, whether it is novel. I think that's the term that they use, no? Novelty, especially for patent. No? For utility models, not much novelty is needed. No?
Okay.
Because the problem is, sometimes we are excited. Oh, this is something new. But when you search I don't know if there's the worldwide
Yes,
database.
they
no?
use a database worldwide.
According to one of our key informants in the Visayas now, where research is already being done by the Chinese. No? So you need people really to do this, no, for the inventors.
And then after that, you're going to process documents, you're going to submit
Yes,
it
it's
right
a-
to IPOFIL.
The IPOFIL.
It's a time-consuming process. No? I don't think if the scientist or the researcher can do it.
Yes, and that's
On
only
its
for
own.
IP protection po ha. There's a separate set of activities for transferring them to the business sector, for instance, or to MSMEs. For the commercialization activities is another area.
So we're already talking about all these activities happening with technology transfer, whether it's going to be with the university or the RDIs. Now, what were the problems for that you have encountered or you were able to identify when it comes to technology transfer?
There's quite a lot of problems. No?
Maybe the most
Especially
problems.
for SUCs, no. Well, to give you context, compliance, no, came rather late for many SUCs. What do you mean by late? That the IP policy or the technology, even the technology transfer protocol, and of course the technology transfer offices, some of them were created 2015, some even 2019 or later. That's basically 10 years,
10 years.
no?
After.
Almost 10 years since the IRR was approved.
So ibig sabihin UPLB was even early.
Yeah,
in
one
the
of
game
Yes,
because
yeah.
one of the early.
I think
One of the
2012?
earliest.
Yes,
2011,
earliest
2012.
institutions.
So that's the context, no. So a lot of the problems, no, emanated from that, no. And the problems can be categorized as policy related. What I mean by policy is the internal policy of the institution and also the national policy. So what are these problems, no? Because they are quite new, no. Of course, the first problem is the lack of policy.
Okay.
The policy,
Internally to the
yeah,
SUC?
yes,
Okay.
internal to the SUC. But for those who already have instituted their technology transfer protocol or the IP policy, no, there are still some vague provisions, no. So there will be problem in implementation, no. Why are there vague provisions? Because many of them almost copied the provisions of the IRR to their internal policy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my appreciation. No? And when you read the IRR,
It's quite general.
it's just just a guideline. It's
Yes.
not specific. It will not tell you what percentage of the income do you give to the inventor, how much to the university. No, it won't give you, the IRR won't give you that. It
should be something that you should discuss
Yes,
among
it-
yourselves.
it should be something that will be discussed by the university or the RDI. No? So what else? Awareness issue. No? It's not only policy awareness. Well, it's mostly policy awareness. But what's surprising is that some researchers are not aware, no, of the IP protection system. Some are
Still, at this,
Yes.
at this point.
some are aware, but
They don't.
some are
have
reluctant to protect their intellectual property. There are many reasons for that. One is, of course, the process is so time-consuming. You need money, no? So you have to give financial and what else? Yung human resource assistance, no? The other is it's just lack of awareness of how IP protection works, because they don't want to protect their IPs on the fear that they cannot use it for extension activities. When in fact they can, because they are the owners. No? Because many of our researchers still believe that any knowledge generated by using government money should be given to the people for free.
For free.
Yes, it
So
should be a public
basically,
good.
yeah.
I think that's one of the contentions with the word commercialization. When tech transfer
Yes.
became a buzzword.
Yes, but let's focus first on IP protection. IP protection naman, it doesn't mean commercialism, but you need to protect your intellectual property, whether you will use it for extension or you will choose commercialization.
Alright.
Why? Because you run the risk of your IP being copied by others. Because if you use it in your extension activities, you're already showing it to many people, to a lot of people. And if you don't protect it, and then somebody
will take
credit
yes,
of it.
yes, exactly. Even if it's just copyright protection, they should do it. Now, commercialization versus extension. There are technologies, no,
Fit the commercialization.
that is fit for commercialization pathway. By the way, under this study, we chose commercialization instead of technology transfer. No?
Okay.
Although the wording of the law, no, it says may assign licensing. No? Kasi the word may means, I don't know, it doesn't force you. It's not mandatory. No? But when you read it, it's more of commercialization, derivation of income from licensing, etc. Now, back to the issue at hand, yung extension, commercialization. Tama si Danica, there are technologies fit for commercialization. There are those fit for extension.
Yes.
Okay.
That's also another problem of state universities and colleges, because they have a lot of researches, but the outputs of these researches do not fit the commercialization pathway. That's why their commercialization performance is low.
So there's also a measure for that. Commercially, but if you're
Yeah, we tried.
We
Did you measure that? You tried.
We tried to measure it, and do you want me to tell about it already?
The performance.
The performance. Okay, sige. Since you mentioned it, no.
Because we focus on the compliance, but we also had some a little bit of data on the performance of
we asked
RTIs.
them,
Yes,
no. But this is a topic for further research, no. What I mean further research is more data, more detailed, no. Details, no. The better, no. So in terms of performance, we can measure it in terms of number of IPs, intellectual property protection granted, no. When you look at the data, no, we kind of have a lot of applications and also a lot of applications approved. No? However, if you further look at it, of course I can look at it. No, sorry. Most of our protected IPs are either copyrights,
Okay.
no,
utility models,
industrial designs. No? Very few are patents.
very few also are plant varieties.
Okay.
Why did I mention that? Because patent is the most difficult to get. It is where the criteria of novelty comes in. It's very difficult.
To be unique.
Yes,
Yeah.
it has to be totally unique in order to be granted a patent.
It should have not been done before or not have been created before. Totally new, no? And it's the most difficult one compared to industrial models, utility models rather, or industrial models. So I think the rate, no, of applications and applications approved still high.
Yes.
But the ultimate measure is the number of technology transfer agreements. That's the one that is very low.
So that's
Especially for SUCs. What do I mean by low? In terms of the number of IPs protected, no, relative to the number of technology transfer agreements, it's very low.
Okay.
So that's the one measure of low. In terms of the number of SUCs with technology transfer, it's still low. So it's just a small group, no? Small group of SUCs that has commercialized technology.
Really? Okay.
Now, relative to RDIs, the performance of RDIs are much higher than SUCs. Well, that's quite expected because they are more focused on research and development. They don't have the instruction mandate, so they can focus more on their task at hand.
Okay. So I think we were able to flesh out some of the significant findings that you had with your study.
Yes, so that's why we said that mere compliance did not actually translate to high performance.
Okay. So which is what we can say, something that the SUCs has to look at so that they can improve.
Yes, but
their
at least
performance,
it's a start po, di ba, Mr.
Right.
Lee? Since they are already complying with the law,
Mhm.
so the only thing to do is to siguro up pa the efforts on commercialization.
Right. So
I
now,
think we should start with yung increasing the number of patents, no? Kasi we also did this logistic regression, no, by our resident statistician Francis Paderagao, no? And one of the significant determinants of technology transfer performance is the number of patents.
number of patents.
In addition to the number of full-time employees with plantilla position. No?
Okay.
So I'm very glad, no, because we were able to validate with some quantitative analysis. Na yes, universities, if they wish to increase the technology transfer performance, they have to put people that can focus, no, on their job.
Yes, so on that, sir, tuloy ko na po yung question. So, I think naman po, even though the commercialization is low, there are some institutions who were able to successfully
Yes.
commercialize technology. So, we're not saying that's actually zero. So, there are some universities and institutions, or rather a lot of RDIs who were able to successfully commercialize.
Okay.
So, in these institutions, Sir Hadji, what can you say were the facilitating factors for them?
Well, the obvious,
The office po, nabanggitin na the plantilla staff.
well, everything else kasi doon, it will be under the management. So you have to have the leadership or the management that is appreciative and of course supportive of the technology commercialization efforts. No? Kasi if they are not supportive, and then the people, even if you have the office and you have the people, they will just be working on their own, no, without the support, and probably they won't get much resources. Kasi yung human resource and the financial resources will be basically approved or provided by those occupying the position, no, at the higher level, no, sa inyong institution. So you have to have those people supportive of the technology transfer process. So sabi nga ni Danica, TTOs, etc. No? Yes, that's important. No? And mas okay if you already have those offices and you have a leader that will directly or supportive of those offices. Kasi one of the issues for those offices, no, in addition to the lack of full-time head, lack of employees with plantilla position, is they also lack money,
So
for their operation.
Okay.
No? So, of course, if your president or the chancellor is supportive, there's a high probability of getting the required, no, money for their activities.
So you would also say that these facilitating factors are what SUCs and RDIs needed to increase or to make commercialization of their technologies better, or to improve the performance when it comes to commercialization.
Yes. But of course, there's a lot of others, no, na facilitating factors. Another one is on the researchers or the inventors themselves. No, if the inventor appreciates IP protection, he is aware of the process, and he is aware of the technology commercialization pathway, not only the extension. Of course, that will be a big factor already, no? Because if the inventor's mind is already closed on the commercialization pathway, it will deter the commercialization process. No?
Right.
No matter how fit the technology is for commercialization, if the inventor herself or himself is not open to that, and then we cannot do anything about it unless the government marches in. I don't think they will do that.
I see. But Sir Hadji, you have talked so much about the results of your study and how we can better improve tech transfer and commercialization within SUCs or maybe within the Philippines. I think this will have a good impact to other institutions if they will only be able to read your reports. Now, one of the things that Patok is wanting to achieve is actually to help our students and researchers when it comes to their topics in the future. Talking about technology transfer here in the Philippines, what areas should be studied further by our students and researchers?
Okay, my response will not be based on our study already. Probably this is just based on my opinion. No? I assume this will be for the whole UPLB. Because in CPAf we don't generate technology naman. No?
Yes. But
okay.
we can study the policy.
I cannot identify specific technology or specific discipline. But what I will advise them, especially those who are into the technology or hard sciences, is to go to the people, no? Ask them what their problems are. No?
Okay.
Of course, not all problems can be solved by technology, no? But those that can be addressed by a technology, no? And then maybe they can address that, no? Because before, our model is the supply-push model for technology generation. No? The scientists will study what they know, no? Based on their expertise, based on their graduate studies, no? And then generate technology, etc. And then we just put the technology on the market and let the market decide, no, who will buy this. Luma na yon, it's old. No? Maybe we focus more on identifying what's the problem on the ground. No? What's the problem? Not only farmers, not only the people. Also, what's the problem of the business? Especially the SMEs, MSMEs, no? I think that this should be our focus, yung MSMEs.
Micro, small,
no?
medium,
What their problems are these problems, can we address this through technological approach? And if we can, then let's develop that technology. Of course, we can also partner with the big industry, but sometimes they already have their own R&D and
yes.
Most of the time, no? It is the MSMEs that really needs our help. I think the government already recognizes that, no? If you happen to read, no, the Innovation Act.
Yes, we have the Philippine Innovation Act.
And the startup
You also
Act.
have the Innovative Startup Act. So we have a lot of enabling policies. Actually.
There's a lot, no? So
Yes.
it's just a matter of implementing it and of course monitoring if we are actually achieving the intended outcomes of these plans.
And perhaps on the part of our MSMEs, their awareness to these kinds of
Yes.
policies that
Yes.
would enable them to improve on their businesses.
Yes, I think that's what our research institutions need po, ano? The link between having a linkage between the MSMEs and research institutions. And these research institutions, as what Mr. Hadji has mentioned, should be demand-driven. Then po, no?
That's the exact word,
Yes,
demand-driven.
Actually, I think the UST has been doing a lot on this aspect already. They have, is it a cradle or nicer or?
I think both.
And then they have the small enterprise technology upgrading program already. That has been in existence for so long, no? And it is, of course, as the name implies, it is for the small enterprise and it's technology upgrading. No? But of course, innovation, if you talk about innovation, di lang naman siya technology. No? Pwede kasi siyang proseso, pwede innovation in management. So, we just have to broaden yung ating perspective sa innovations.
Alright, so I think we were able to flesh out the details of Sir Hadji's project, and we learned about so much about technology transfer when it comes to SUCs and RDIs here in the Philippines. So Danix?
Yes, so I hope our listeners were able to learn a lot about the technology transfer environment here in the Philippines. But to know more information regarding the study or the results of the study, I think we could actually contact you, Sir Hadji.
Yes. Or probably you can wait for our official papers to come out, no?
So wait for it on our website.
And Danica will write the policy brief.
Yes, we just submitted the terminal report a few days ago, actually. So, yes, and we're planning to release journal articles and probably a policy brief regarding this topic.
Wonderful.
So, I think that concludes our third episode. Once again, I am Danica Amor M. Domingo.
But before we close, thank you,
Oh, yes.
Sir Hadji,
So-
for
you're
giving us the
welcome.
time today. So, I am Sam De Los Santos at ito ang Patok.
Usapang Public Affairs at Development.